demographic at the same time. So whatever we've had to this point in terms of debt build, it's about to get so much bigger. That's where entitlements come in because Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, these are so much bigger line items than military spending. And if you're going to be serious about getting back to a black zero for your budgeting plan, that's where the hard work is going to be done. That is much more difficult than simply going after the military. And it will require a lot more sacrifice by people who are voters. Because the baby boomers are, even though they're advanced in age, they are the second largest voting bloc right now after the millennials. And they will outnumber Gen X for at least another 12 years. So the single biggest beneficiary of a bad debt environment is the group that can prevent any meaningful changes to it if they so choose. And I'm pretty sure they so choose. But I don't think I'm as depressed about that as you are. Assuming the United States can maintain its broad growth rate, which looking at demographic and geopolitical factors, I think 2.5 to 3% growth for the next decade is reasonable. You can do deficit spending to the tune of about $800 to $900 billion a year without increasing the relative debt load. Now, I don't feel great about saying this, but the numbers do hold. Second, and this is probably far more important, because our boomers had kids, there is a light at the end of the debt tunnel. There is another surge of capital coming down in 10 years. Most of the world doesn't have that. So everyone else is dealing with our aging process and crisis and the numbers turning against them at a higher percentage point, or I'm sorry, at a higher proportion compared to their population. Our boomers about a quarter smaller than everyone else's because no one else has millennials. So for them, this isn't a 10-year period. This is their now norm. And it will get worse and worse every year until their systems collapse. And in that sort of environment, especially once you throw in things like the Ukraine war and a China breakdown and general deglobalization, the volume of capital internationally that is going to be looking for a safe haven is going to be monumental. And there are just so few places that are options, with the United States being bigger than all of them put together. So we know capital costs are going to rise. We know that capital availability is going to drop. We know that our debt level is going to increase. But at the same time, all of that is happening, there's going to be this steady stream turning into a steady tsunami of capital coming in from the wider world that will help finance it all and will help drive economic growth even further. It won't be a straight line. I would expect the US dollar to be at multi-decade lows at the moment. And it's entirely possible that that crack has already happened in Europe. And it's manifesting, among other ways, through the exchange rate. Well, let's split that into 2 points. So the first one is not living longer, but being more productive for longer. So right now there's a problem. People talk about extending the retirement age because that would generate more income and put off the payments. And that sounds very attractive until you realize that between illness and mortality, 65 is at the moment kind of our limit. So if we raise the age of retirement to 70, we're actually getting diminishing returns. We get people who are paid highly because they've been at their jobs for a long time, but their productivity starts to plummet after 65. So something that reverses that productivity plummeting would be what we were after. Things that allow you to be more productive and healthier longer. That would be what we're after. That is not where the money has gone because that's not what the baby boomers have been interested in. They don't want to work longer. They want to live longer. And so we've put all of our money in terms of medical research into extending life, but not necessarily making it more enjoyable. And that is absolutely the wrong way to go from an economic point of view. And we, to my knowledge, have no imminent breakthroughs in that first category that would actually solve some of these fiscal issues. All the breakthroughs are looking at the second problem, the aging issue, and that actually makes the fiscal situation worse by leaving people on the dole with high healthcare costs, without income and paying taxes for longer. I'm not really concerned about agriculture from the American point of view. I don't see any of the products that we make for domestic consumption really seeing significant shifts. Most of our supply chains in terms of the equipment and the labor and the inputs, whether it's fertilizer, pesticide, whatever, that's all done within North America for the most part. So we can have significant global disruptions in any number of ways. And the North American food cycle is going to be broadly okay. The rest of the world, that is most definitely not the case. We're getting our first taste of disruptions to agricultural inputs right now. a number of the world's fertilizers, the largest exporter is Russia or Belarus. And so we've already seen this calendar year significant changes to who is planting what, where, or how much fertilizer they're using. And when we get to our first good harvest forecast in September, we'll have an idea of just how low global yields are going to be relative to what we think of as normal. We don't have to wait too much longer to find out about that. And this is the start then of a significant calorie deficit on a global basis. Not in North America, probably not in the Western Hemisphere writ large, because that area is broadly self-sufficient and immune to what's going on in the Eastern Hemisphere. But we're looking at input shortages, we're looking at energy shortages, we're looking at capital shortages. And as soon as it becomes clear just how China's going to shake out, we're probably going to be looking at equipment shortages as well. So I can see dramatically reduced output agriculturally in China, in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East, in the former Soviet Union, and based on how bad it gets, even in Australia. And we're talking about 3 and 5 calories that the world produces are facing chronic limitations in how they can maintain that output due to some sort of shortage in something. And almost none of it applies to North America. And because of what's going on with the Ukraine war, the contradictions inherent to the green transition are making themselves very apparent in the European space. And that is going to force a lot of people to make some different decisions. Putting up solar and wind in places that are neither windy or sunny is a questionable strategy in the best of times. And it has proven so spectacularly unsuccessful in Europe that they're going back to coal wholesale because it's the only way they can prevent deindustrialization. But people have not gotten used to going down a level to a little bit more base mechanics that allow modern society to exist. We all understand instinctually that you need iron ore to make steel, but we don't really process where that comes from or what that looks like. And whether it's steel or lithium or copper or zinc or any of the others, they are concentrated in terms of their production zones and their processing zones more so than oil is. And so it is very easy for me to imagine a dozen scenarios off the top of my head where the world loses access to one or more of these materials and how that cascades then through all the other economic sectors, first in manufacturing and then going into transport and agriculture very quickly. That is not something that we're used to thinking about, because a lot of these materials were not processed in the volumes or the purity that we have today before World War II. And so their entire production cycle is defined by an open, globalized world. And if you break that, so many places are going to have to get by without so many of the things that we think of as just modern, essential stuff. We have not started planning for that, but it's coming very, very soon.